And you see Lucas, member of Card Hoarder, on the right. Both players are going to 6 cards at the moment. Now, we just got our metagame breakdown here, and you've been seeing a lot of the same 2 decks this weekend because right now it looks to be a 2-deck format. 111 players making it into day 2. Both Black-Green Delirium and White-Blue Flash are being 30% of the metagame right now.
That's not a low number.
No, so between them, they are 60% of the decks. No other deck. I guess, and you mentioned vehicles in third. We had 15 copies of vehicles in today too, and that's about it. We have some other decks. You know, a couple. I think Black Red between zombies and aggro they have 8 copies in today too. They're doing okay, but get more to what that means later on as far as deck building. Zan Syed, the only white-red humans player in today too. But he's at 9-2, very live for top 8 here, and he'll start the game off on Inspiring Vantage. Both players kept on 6. Zan's first play is going to be a turn 2 Smuggler's Copter. We'll see where Kiefer responds. Looks like he has a Copter of his own. And Lucas's hand actually a lot to play here. He's got lands 3, 4, Avacyn and Gideon and Reflector Mage. So pretty into all of that. Zan's going to play Hanvir Militia Captain, crew the Smuggler's Copter, and attack for 3. But just working up the curve, Lucas's plays are going to be tough for Zan to deal with.
And Zan does have 4 copies of Gideon in his deck as well. So the player on the play, the first person to land a Gideon, is able to leverage some significant power in a matchup like this. Though if Zan doesn't have it, that could be a big opening for Kiefer.
Zan discards a second Smuggler's Copter. We go back over to Lucas. He does have Port Town, revealing land 4. It's going to be Reflector Mage, most likely. That will bounce the Militia Captain. And importantly here, this means that Zan's got a lot to do, right? He can't crew his Copter. He doesn't have second white. You're right, if he curves into Gideon, that's great, but it's not given that he can do that.
And a lot of the power of Zan's deck, certainly in this matchup, is being able to curve 1, 2, 3. The only 1-drops in the deck are Inventor's Apprentice and Thraben Inspector, but missing on those is very detrimental when you're playing against a Reflector Mage deck, when you're playing against a Gideon deck. You have to get on the board fast.
Lucas, tough decision there. He did not know if he wanted to swing the Smuggler's Copter. His hand is very good. It's 4th land, Gideon, Avacyn, and another Smuggler's Copter.
When your deck is producing white mana and your opponent's deck is producing red mana, typically you want to try to assume a role that involves a lot of blocking. He wants to be able to block Zan's Smuggler's Copter with his own Copter.
So he leaves back in case Zan makes a creature. Now Zan did not have the 4th land. He drew it for the turn, but it's a copy of Needle Spires, so it comes into play tapped. That means his Gideon is going to be delayed a turn. So Zan's play here is Thalia's Lieutenant just as a 1/1. He's going to crew Smuggler's Copter and attack. We'll draw and discard for him. And as Lucas did an attack last turn with Smuggler's Copter, I would guess that he's setting up for a block. And that's true. Accrues his own Copter. He'll draw and discard.
Yeah, so this was the plan, and it was pretty clearly the plan. I'm a little bit curious about Zan's attack here. I suppose he doesn't really have much in the way of ways to make his Copter able to attack through Lucas's Copter. You know, this trade's just going to happen eventually. Perhaps he feels that he could really benefit from the loot on this turn.
Yeah, he might be able to. Lucas actually not really going to benefit off the loot. He drew and discarded the same card. It was a second Reflector Mage. But the vehicles trade, and we go back over to Lucas. And because of that tap land, that Needle Spires from Zan, it is going to be Lucas Kiefer who gets the first Gideon.
And this is massive.
4-mana Planeswalker into play. It will bring along an ally. And now Lucas will just pass. He's respecting Needle Spires and Thalia's Lieutenant.
Yep, he doesn't need to get aggressive. He has the Planeswalker. He's able to just start accruing some allies, do a lot of blocking. He has the Avacyn. That's likely to be the biggest spell in either deck when your opponent starts leading on red and white lands.
Yeah, I talked about how that was the most important card in the matchup for Lucas. His hand doesn't have a 5th land, but he has a lot going for him. He has a Avacyn in hand and a Selfless Spirit already in his hand. So it's not going to be long before Lucas can sweep the board.
For removal spells in Zahn's deck, 4 Galvanic Bombardment, 4 Declaration in Stone. If you're able to draw a bunch of Galvanic Bombardments, you can kind of be advantaged against Avacyn, though in most situations, Avacyn's going to be able to get Zahn in combat.
So Zahn will play his Gideon. It's the second one. He'll make an ally as well as we go back over to Lucas Kiefer. Spell Queller was the draw. He does not have the 5th land just yet for his Avacyn. But a lot of good options. So Avacyn, Queller, Selfless Spirit, Smuggler's Copter is the hand for Lucas.
Mm-hmm. Now when you're the player with the first Gideon, I do kind of like just putting his Gideon up to 5 and attacking Zahn's Gideon. If he chump blocks with either creature, that's fine. You're kind of keeping up on tokens that way. And if you just get his Gideon, that's perfect.
Well, you have a choice if you're Lucas, right? You can make a Knight ally, and then you can decide that both players will keep making tokens. Or you can decide that both players will keep trading creatures.
In particular, because Lucas's hand contains Avacyn and Selfless Spirit, it's likely that he's going to kill every 2/2 on the battlefield at some point this game. So I really like plussing.
And that's what he does. Pluses his Gideon up to 5, swings the team. He's swinging the entire team at Zahn's Gideon. And I really like this play.
Most likely Zahn, if he wants, he'll trade the ally for the ally. And this is throwing some extra damage at the Gideon. I don't necessarily like swinging with everything. I'm for sure on board with attacking with the Gideon. We'll see how much Zahn values it.
A lot. He'll trade allies and chump block Lucas's Planeswalker. So Zahn's Planeswalker down to 2. Keep in mind that those Knight allies are not humans. So Thalia's Lieutenant was a 1/1. And Lucas is just going to play out the rest of his hand. He could have left up Spell Queller, but instead he plays Selfless Spirit and Smuggler's Copter here.
And it's going to be really difficult for Zahn to remove both of those blockers. You know, theoretically, he can plus his Gideon and get at Lucas's Gideon, but there's too many blockers on that side.
Yeah.
Selfless Spirit specifically, unless it's an exile effect like Declaration of Stone, you'd have to have Bombardment on Spirit plus Declaration to get this Gideon through.
Pia Nalar is the play for Zahn. He'll get a Thopter. So Pia has an interesting ability here. 1 mana, sacrifice an artifact, target creature can't block this turn. So Gideon is going to plus to 3 and attack. Now this means Lucas cannot crew his Copter, right? Because if he goes to crew the Copter, then Zahn
will be able to make it so the Copter was not able to block. So if
Right.
he wants to block, it's going to be with the Selfless Spirit.
Selfless Spirit, yeah. And that's a big price, right? Because Selfless Spirit, I think Lucas was hoping to combo that with the Avacyn in his hand.
Right. Yeah, and this is really part of why I didn't like the Alpha Strike out of Lucas. I would like to have one of his Reflector Mage or Ally token on blocks here.
So Selfless Spirit just has to go in front of Gideon. Yeah, I think Lucas is thinking then, yeah, does he... Okay, he's going to crew Smuggler's Copter. That means Zahn has the option to no blocks it. We'll see if he takes his option. He does. Smuggler's Copter cannot block. That means that Lucas will lose his Planeswalker.
So Lucas has accepted his fate that he has to give up some valuable material, be it the Selfless Spirit or the Gideon. By giving up the Gideon instead of the Selfless Spirit, he has a clear line to kill Zahn's Gideon. He can now crew his Smuggler's Copter, and Zahn will not be able to block it.
This isn't horrible for Lucas.
And he still has the ability to leverage the Avacyn. So I think he made the best of a bad situation on that turn. I think that was well navigated by Lucas.
And the draw here is a good one for Kiefer. It's going to be Thraben Inspector. He plays that, gets a clue. This allows him to leave up the Spell Queller in his hand. And now he will crew the Copter. The Copter's going to attack. So is Selfless Spirit. Trigger on Copter. I'm not sure that Lucas is going to loot anything here. Yeah, a land. That's interesting. I wonder if he'll keep it, but no, he'll discard.
Yeah, he'll find a land eventually. He has Spell Queller mana up right now. Zahn's very behind on board. That's a great way to leverage your tempo.
2 cards in hand. We go back over to Zahn. White-red humans, a deck that is lower to the ground in this matchup and could get ahead, but now that he's behind on the board, his cards are less powerful. Things are more grim for Zahn than it might seem. He will attempt to Smuggler's Copter. Lucas will Spell Quell. And Zahn will Declaration and Stone the Queller away and get his Copter back. But you see Lucas up to 2 clues. That's probably still a fine turn for him.
Yep. The Copter plus a crew on Zahn's side does slow Lucas down a little bit, but he just picked up his 5th land. He has the Avacyn now.
It's untapped.
Things are looking real good for Lucas.
Brave Inspector going to crew up Smuggler's Copter again. That will swing in. Lucas a draw and discard. His hand with Avacyn is the last card. It's going to be pretty good.
So this is a situation where many people would argue that you should loot just because the volume of spells that matter is quite low. The odds of hitting them are lower, and you're likely to just loot away something that's not as good. Not looting, totally fine. He has a card he wants in his hand. He just had to discard whatever he drew.
He would. It's the best card in his deck in his hand that he could have. So the question, I might loot just so that my opponent doesn't know I have. I mean, him looting there, not looting there, is kind of just says, hey, I have Avacyn. And maybe that doesn't matter because Avacyn's like, what's Zahn going to do about it?
If you loot, you have to posture and try to disguise the fact that you just discarded whatever you drew and didn't really care.
So Zahn plays Hanvir Garrison and Hanvir Militia Captain.
Well, now this Avacyn is just going to end this game. Lucas has the ability to flash an Avacyn, sacrifice Selfless Spirit, and just Plague Win Zahn.
And that's what he's going to do. End step, plays Avacyn. So I was saying that attack telegraphed Avacyn. If that's true, then this is a mistake by Zahn.
Yeah.
He could have read this for Avacyn, and now he's going to lose his whole board. So Lucas plays Avacyn, sacrifices Selfless Spirit. Now that a creature dies, Avacyn flips into the Purifier. 3 damage to all creatures and to Zahn. Zahn loses everything but the Copter.
And
Lucas draws. Yeah, this is and 2 clues, a Copter of his own. This is great.
Lucas lost his creatures, but there's really no window for him to crew the Copter without the Copter just dying.
Right.
But doesn't really matter. Zahn's on 12. Lucas has a 6-point flyer here.
So Zahn goes to 6. Lucas's last cracked a clue there and then drew into Spell Queller. So if Zahn has an out, like a Declaration in Stone, that's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Draws 1 card, passes.
And all Zahn has access to right now is activate Needle Spires, crew Smuggler's Copter, chump block.
Smart move there. Lucas does not crack the 2nd clue, just doesn't want to take down Spell Queller for anything.
It could be like a Stasis Snare out of Zahn, so you want to cover that.
Zahn's checking Lucas's graveyard. He knows that he'll need that information for game 2. The 6-point swing from Avacyn is going to win game 1 for Lucas Kiefer. White-blue flash up a game on white-red humans.
Yeah, and you saw there, Avacyn was extremely powerful, but Zahn really needs to leverage early aggression if he wants to beat this deck. The power of White-Blue Flash is its ability to get ahead and stay ahead, and if you don't establish a board presence, cards like Spell Queller are just that much more powerful against you. Lucas is able to play as Gideon and leverage it more effectively.
You know, and Lucas, I think, I'm not sure that Zahn has a route to win that game. The turn where Lucas doesn't loot, I think Zahn missed something there by not, like Lucas made a show of strength, right? I have 1 card, I'm not looting. For Zahn to commit an entire board of X3s into that play is really Zahn saying, I can't beat Avacyn.
Yeah,
and maybe he just can't.
He can't. He could sandbag the Garrison, and that's fine, but then he
still doesn't win.
Right, he has Garrison versus 6/5 flyer that kills him in 2 turns.
So maybe he just has maybe he sees the writing on the wall and just has,
he hopes it's a missed trigger or a bluff.
Oh, Lucas isn't going to miss that trigger.
No.
Let's look at Zahn's sideboard. So we'll start. 3 Stasis Snare, 2 Blessed Alliance, 2 Selfless Spirit, 2 Weaver of Lightning, 2 Chandra Torch of Defiance, 2 Nahiri the Harbinger, and 2 Fragmentize.
Fragmentize has been quite good against this white-blue flash deck. They have the Copters, they have the Stasis Snares, always watching we've seen. Stasis Snare himself, if Avacyn's the most important card, how about some answers to Avacyn? This other stuff is all kind of medium. Weaver of Lightning is not terrible. I think it's better out of a control deck in a matchup like this. He does have Galvanic Bombardments, which he can combine with it to kill basically anything in Kiefer's deck.
It's good against Selfless Spirits. I don't know if he'll ever take down a Spell Queller with Weaver of Lightning. That's a tall order.
And Selfless Spirit is okay. The fact that Lucas is on Spell Quellers and you're disadvantaged in combat there, I think kind of puts me off of that card.
How do you feel about Nahiri the Harbinger or Chandra Torch of Defiance, these 4-mana planeswalkers?
Nahiri can just exile Stasis Snare straight away, so that's pretty good. Looting is fine. You have to feel like you're able to go long. And I think that Zaan's role in this matchup is all about hitting 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, so I don't really like Nahiri. And I think Chandra is much worse than Nahiri in a matchup like this, because if you're using it to kill something, it just costs so much loyalty. Lucas will have no difficulty cleaning it up.
Yeah, so we talked about how Blue-White Flash and Black-Green Delirium right now looking to shape up to be a 2-deck format. It's a challenge to deck builders everywhere. We're going to see to try to break into that format. Now, one thing that always helps do that is when a new set comes out. And the new set's coming out January 14th and 15th. That's going to be Aether Revolt for pre-release. Now, over Star City Games, we have our pre-release package, which this is at stores around the country. You can get this exclusive playmat designed by Star City Games, part of our creature collection. This is the pre-release exclusive playmat, Pandra Nalar. You can get, of course, this Planeswalker from Kaladesh that I'm sure you're all very familiar with. This is given away at pre-releases, participating stores. It's limited edition. You can only get it by showing up. You can find a pre-release near you that's hosting it at starcitygames.com/pre-release. If your store wants to register for it, this is the last chance to register, so contact us at ISP, that's in-store programs, at starcitygames.com.
It's an awesome playmat.
Now, Lucas's sideboard for the 16-year-old from Boulder, Colorado, he's looking for his first top 8 finish in an open. You mentioned before that this has really been the first big year for the Kiefer family. Lucas, Jack, and Quinn, all three of them making it out to each of these tournaments. Now, the first trophy was last weekend. Actually was not Lucas's. It was his younger brother, Jack, taking down the Standard Classic with White Blue Flash. Now, Lucas is looking to one-up that. He has an open top 8. This would be his second if he top 8s here. He top 8'd the Orlando Open earlier this year. But the first open trophy, that would certainly be something he'd be excited to get this weekend.
Oh yeah, at 16 years old. You know, when I was that age, the biggest accolade you could reasonably expect, that was the Junior Super Series, was kind of what players played at that point in time.
So for Lucas's sideboard in the matchup, we'll get to that here. He has taken a control role game 1, and I expect him to continue doing that. Blessed Alliance, Declaration in Stone, Fragmentize, Spell Shrivel. How many of these removal spells does he want?
He doesn't want the Spell Shrivels for sure, but the Alliances, the Declarations, those should all come in. The games he's losing all involve a lot of fast aggression. Even just the life gain on Blessed Alliance is likely to matter. Give him some time to leverage Avacyn. Declaration's great. I can see an argument for going to Jace so that once you pull ahead with removal spells, you can start accruing card advantage and try to fight that war. Mostly it's those removal spells, though, that are coming in.
This is a matchup where Lenvala, the Preserver, seems pretty excellent, too.
Yeah, if you can get to 6, it's quite good.
All right, game number 2. Zaan will be on the play. Starts with Thraben Inspector and a clue. Now, Lucas mulligan to 6 here, but Scryed to the top. And he'll Thraben Inspector of his own.
This is a matchup where the Flash deck having Turn 1 Inspector matters more than others.
For Zaan, second Thraben Inspector, Needle, Spires, and a pass. Let's see 2 clues here for the White-Red Humans deck. It's really neat that this is the go-to 1-drop of the format. It's not really an aggressive card, but there's so much you can do with it. I mean, especially out of a White-Red Humans deck, something that plays Thalia's Lieutenant.
Right. It's a card that initially doesn't look very exciting, but it's quite powerful. You could make an argument that it's an upgraded Elvish Visionary, and we all know how good Elvish Visionary is.
It's unbeatable. So Zaan swings both creatures, gets 1 damage in, plays Smuggler's Copter, but here's an opening for Lucas. Zaan doesn't play land number 3. So he has a lot of card advantage on the board. 2 clues, the Smuggler's Copter. But resource light as we go to Kiefer's 3rd turn.
Yeah, it looks like he has a Gideon in his holdings. As of yet, it looks like no 4th land drop, but if he's able to make that happen, that would be massive.
Yeah, Lucas, a lot of tools here. Always watching, Stasis Snare, Spell Queller, all in his hand. Zaan is going to crew the Smuggler's Copter, and Lucas will respond with Stasis Snare. So no attacks, no loots for Zaan. We'll see if he can hit the land this turn. He plays another Copter, and no, he's going to miss for a 2nd time.
All right, big opening here. Do we have a land?
Oh, we do, and it was drawn off the top this turn. Lucas hits another basic, so double blue, double white. Will he press the advantage? He's got the Planeswalker.
Now on this window here, if Zon's able to crew the Copter and pressure the Gideon, and Lucas does have a Spell Queller yet, so there is some argument for being patient, building up his board a little bit.
That's what he's going to do. He's going to play Thraben Inspector and leave up Queller mana. Now, importantly, he doesn't have double white, so that play last turn where he snared a Copter, Zon's not going to worry about that one. He will crew his Smuggler's Copter, attack, and loot. Hits Needle Spires. Zon did draw a mountain that turn as well, so no longer is he stuck on resources. He has lands 3 and 4 as he discards Galvanic Bombardment.
And that's a great card to discard because now every copy in his deck can just kill Spell Queller cleanly. The first one, not especially good in this matchup. You don't really want to kill a Thraben Inspector with your removal spell.
Sure.
The second one can kill any Spell Queller, and the third one, this is where it gets really big, it can kill Avacyn.
1 mana to kill Avacyn hardly seems fair. A Needle Spires and a pass for Zon. Lucas going to end step play Spell Queller. And that's the first really aggressive line we've seen from Lucas. He could have cracked a clue, but instead he goes to put the damage on the board. Draws another Spell Queller. And it's going to be Always Watching. Lucas certainly has changed the game plan here. All the creatures 1/1 and Vigilance. This would be a swing for 7. Will Zon take it all? He will, goes to 13, Lucas passes.
And that Always Watching makes it so that Spell Queller is just a 3/4 against the Smuggler's Copter on Zon's side.
Yeah, no problem there.
Yeah, Lucas has pulled very far ahead with that.
And, you know, that's really the impressive part of this Flash deck, and especially with how Lucas is playing this game. How quickly, you know, last turn he did not play a Gideon, which would have been the most aggressive play. He plays Thraben Inspector. He does something really, you know, controlling, plays it slow, and then sees an opening and just immediately shifts gears.
You know, and all this stuff is happening. He's ahead on board, and he just has Gideon backup, which is quite the position of power. Declaration
in Stone on the Spell Queller for Zon. Lucas goes up to 2 clues. Zon has a second Declaration. He might, yeah, he's going to Declaration Lucas's whole board. So Lucas has no creatures but 4 clues. Zon will crew and swing. So, okay, now Lucas is going to have to change roles again, right?
Yeah, he's going to have to reevaluate and change his position. What I really like about how this has played out is Zon had all those removal spells, cleared Lucas's board. You know, Lucas hadn't committed the Gideon. This could have ended up much worse for him if it was a position where all his creatures died and then he was also out of his Planeswalker.
Yeah.
So now he gets to rebuild in a significant way. He used to cast his Selfless Spirit, leave up Spell Queller for this turn, and then cast Gideon on the following turn.
Yeah, and Lucas, remember that Queller's a 3/2 because of the Always Watching he managed to get down. It actually can trade with Smuggler's Copter. Thalia is going to be attempted here by Zon. That might get the Queller out of Lucas's hand.
Yeah, that's a very inviting Spell Queller target, in particular because it would make all the ally tokens off of Gideon enter the battlefield tapped, and because he wants to block with the Spell Queller this turn.
So Lucas gets the 3/4 flyer, and remember, it's protected by Selfless Spirit. But Zon having none of that. He can't protect it from a 3rd Declaration in Stone. Zon gets his legend back, gives Lucas a 5th clue. Crew Smuggler's Copter. Zon's looks like he just wants this board to all trade off. So he will swing and loot. Now Lucas can trade with the flyer, or he actually just has a free block on a Thraben Inspector.
I think I would go for the free block here. He's so far behind on board. He has so many ways to make up card advantage, but it's at the cost of significant resources. He only has 5 lands on the battlefield. He needs to be making a lot of blocks here. So I like keeping the Selfless Spirit around.
He does too. But he's going to take 4 damage. That puts Lucas down to 8. Got to be careful here. Remember, there's a Needle Spires in play as well for Zon. So a draw here from Kiefer. He drew another Selfless Spirit. With 5 clues in play, he's going to start by cracking one.
Yeah, once you establish the line that you want to go with is Selfless Spirit, you can't cast Gideon anyway, so you start by cracking a clue. I like that a lot.
You know what I like a lot with Lucas there? He had 3 islands, 2 plains, tapped double blue for the clue, and then draws Thraben Inspector. He's going to be able to play double creature here just because of that.
Yeah, if you carelessly just tap some of your white mana there, you turn off options.
Swings back with Selfless Spirit, Zon down to 10. But both of Lucas's creatures this turn enter the battlefield tapped because of Thalia, and that's a big That's big for Zahn. He can activate a Needle Spires here and get some damage in if he wants.
And Lucas just has the one blocker. If he activates Needle Spires, Lucas has to block that and is otherwise taking, what, 6 damage?
Well, yeah, so Zahn, we'll watch this play out. Zahn's going to activate Needle Spires, Crew Smuggler's Copter. So swings all 3 creatures. It is a 3 power, a 3, a 3, and a 4. So Lucas is actually alive no matter what he lets through here, but it's really close. And he can block either of these first strike or double strikers because of that Selfless Spirit that's tapped. He can make his guys indestructible, and then his blocker just gets to win the combat.
True. The Thalia might be the most threatening thing here, given that he has the Gideon.
I think I agree, because these creatures entering the battlefield tapped is something that Lucas... So you want to see Spirit in front of Thalia, sacrifice tapped Spirit?
The concern with that line is if Zahn has a Galvanic Bombardment.
Oh, I don't know if he's going to beat that card.
No, you probably just have to make this play and hope for the best.
I mean, if he does, then Lucas will lose to that card with this play.
That's likely going to happen one way or the other.
And that is exactly what's going to happen. Lucas goes for the play. Not sure he was going to be able to beat this card anyway, so he loses both Selfless Spirits for nothing. Goes to 1.
And just has 1 blocker now because he lost both Selfless Spirits.
Draws another Selfless Spirit, but nothing like Fumigate in his deck now. He's going to draw Spell Queller off of a Clue token.
And he just can't produce any more blockers.
Yep. And that will send us to a 3rd game. Zahn Syed evens things up here. And I really like... That was a really interesting game there where Lucas goes from defense to offense, and then Zahn, Lucas turns the corner and Zahn is at the ready. He answers it with a double Declaration Stone turn. And it's that kind of game where Lucas went aggressive and then ended up losing with 5 clues on the board.
Right. And that's part of why I like the way that Zahn has configured as far as I can tell, and why I don't like bringing in the Planeswalkers. He just needs to leverage his aggression, make it so that Lucas does not have time to crack those clues.
And what about the new Thalia? The Thalia Heretic Cathar was so good that game.
Oh, yeah. If you're able to get ahead at all, that really makes it difficult to claw back into the game if your plan involves blocking with creatures in your hand. It made it so that the Gideon in Lucas's hand went from game-breaking to almost embarrassing.
Both players here at 9 and 2. We're thinking with this is 4 rounds to play. 10, 3, and 1 should be a good enough record to make top 8 for these players. So a win here puts them in a very good spot to enter these single elimination rounds of the tournament.
And now with Lucas back on the play, that's definitely where he wants to be in this Game 3 situation, hoping to blunt the assault and pull ahead in a way where he can actually leverage his Gideons.
So this being our last open here of Season 3 means that starting 2 weeks in Atlanta is the beginning of our new season here on the tour. That's Season 1. So starting this weekend, 2 weeks in Atlanta, this December 2nd through 4th. We have, of course, the Atlanta Invitational, and we also have an open that weekend starting on Saturday if you aren't qualified. So in that open will be the first event of the new season. We're going to run down just where all we are going to be, where you can catch the tour when we come to your town. In January, we will have standard opens in Columbus and Richmond. We have regional championships all across the country the following weekend in Modern. Then February, we have 2 more opens. It's Baltimore for our team open, and in Indianapolis, it's our Modern Open. This team open in Baltimore, this is the first one of its kind. It's the 3-person team event. You have a Legacy player, a Standard player, and a Modern player. I know I might make it out for that one. That's going to be really exciting. If I'm not casting, I'll be playing.
Yeah, that sounds like an awesome opportunity. I've always kind of wanted to play that format.
2 weeks later, we make a trip to Dallas for a Modern Open, and then to Worcester for our Legacy Open of the season. So for you Legacy players, that is April 8th and 9th. Mark that one on your calendars. We continue on at the end of April into Atlanta for a Standard Open. In May, we have events in Louisville and Baltimore, Standard and Modern, before we end the season with a June 10th event in Charlotte and the Season 1 Invitational, June 30th through July 2nd, the Modern Standard, the dual format event. So where you can find the SCG Tour coming to cities near you coming up.
Yeah, awesome series of tournaments here. All kinds of formats you can explore.
All right, and of course, with the new season means we have new playmats to give away. So one for each format. For joining a standard, open, or classic, we're giving away a copy of the Smuggler's Copter playmat. These are all exclusive art playmats, and they are free with entry to our opens and classics. So Smuggler's Copter for standard. For modern, it's going to be Aether Vial, the new masterpiece art from Kaladesh. You can see it here. That's for our modern opens and classics. And for the legacy players, you know, Lands has really become quite the deck, and you know you've made it big when you're on the playmat.
Right. Yeah, previously we had Sensei's Divining top, Gamble joining the ranks.
Yeah, so Gamble here on the Legacy playmat. That's the Eternal Masters art of it. So these are free with with any entry to the opens or classics, and you'll be able to pick them up for all of Season 1 next year. So Game 3 here between Syed and Lucas Kiefer. Zahn on White Red Humans mentioned he's the only copy of the deck to make it into Day 2. For Lucas, you know, I think the only copy of White Blue Flash also into Day 2.
He's the 31st copy.
Okay. Slightly more.
Actually, he's the second or third copy.
Yeah, I was like, he wasn't the last one to make it into Day 2. He might have been the first. Lucas Zahn on a mulligan. Last game, Lucas was on a 6 as well. But with how these games have played out, cards like Declaration and Stone, it hasn't always come down to just straight cards. Zahn, remember that game, stuck on 2 lands for multiple turns.
Yeah, leveraging tempo matters a lot. There are certainly haymakers in the matchup. Both players have access to Gideon, Ally Zendikar, super powerful spell. But getting ahead on board and staying ahead is what matters more than anything else here. And Zahn taking a mulligan, there's kind of a script that games that he wins generally follow. It involves getting onto the board with some efficient creatures early, and then leveraging his removal spells once he's ahead.
Yeah, the player that has been ahead on the board. I mean, Game 1, we saw Lucas get ahead on the board and never really let go. And I think from Zahn's side, when he falls behind, he has less catch-up potential. Now, granted, last game he fell behind on the board and then Declaration and stoned his way back in.
Right.
So it's not impossible. And Zahn's kept on 6, and Lucas will start with a Port Town into Thraben Inspector.
Right, this is where Lucas wants to be so far.
Just Needle Spires for Zahn.
One of the weaknesses of the Red-White Humans deck is it's a very tempo-hungry deck, but the mana base does not always cooperate.
Yeah, it's got a lot of 1-drops, but not always able to cast them. For Lucas, he swings with no 2. Looks like he'll be cracking a clue. And now Zahn has a Thraben Inspector of his own. And a land to pass. Lucas could have Revolutionary rebuffed there. It's actually a card I'm surprised to still see in the deck.
Yeah, the reason to keep it in is really just to be mana efficient, though. It's not the most effective card here. On the play, he can leverage it a little bit. If he's able to counter a Gideon, that's a massive swing. He's able to counter a Pian Alar, that card kind of matters.
This was a really interesting development. Lucas played a 3rd land and left up mana. Passed the turn, and Zahn, on the end step, Galvanic Bombardmented away the Thraben Inspector.
Yeah, so the first copy of Bombardment is pretty weak.
Yeah.
So spreading out an Inspector is not the end of the world, and now the 2nd through 4th copies are relevant.
Some heads-up play here by Zahn. He, instead of playing into Spell Queller, he just untapped. He cracked his clue to try to hit a land drop, but didn't. Lucas end-stepped to the Spell Queller, so now he has an attacker on the board. But didn't get. There's nothing under the Spell Queller. It's just a 2/3.
You know, sometimes you would almost prefer that there's nothing under the Queller, so that a removal spell doesn't matter as much.
Smuggler's Copter the play for Zahn. That's not something that Lucas can Revolutionary rebuff, so.
You know, it's something that can profitably block his Spell Queller as well.
So Lucas will play a 5th land and pass. Now you know what that means. Lucas does have a copy of Avacyn in his hand. In fact, he has 2 copies.
Some good interactive spells on top of that as well. He has Reflector Mage, Revolutionary rebuff.
Another Thraben Inspector for Zahn.
You can't rebuff that one either.
Well, he could, but doesn't want to. He'll go for the Angel instead. I like that a lot. and then draws the Selfless Spirit. Okay. If he needs to, he can sweep the board, but he doesn't even need to yet. He'll swing in for 4. Zahn is down to 13.
Now he just gets to bully Zahn with this Avacyn, and then if Zahn's able to find a way out of it, just back up Avacyn.
Just a pass here by Lucas. I almost expected him to play the Selfless Spirit. He's got the whole combo set up. So he has Avacyn in play, Selfless Spirit in hand, and second Avacyn in hand. So for those of you who aren't familiar how this one works, the double Avacyn is just back-breaking. You trigger the first one to flip, and then when it flips to the red one, with the damage trigger on the stack, you can play a second Avacyn, and none of your stuff dies. All of Zahn's things will.
And I like the patience by Lucas. The Selfless Spirit forced the flip line. It's very weak to removal spells. You lose your Spell Queller here. You give up a lot of material for it, and just to kill some Thraben Inspectors.
Yeah, and Lucas is just playing so well here. He swings with Avacyn. Zahn Stasis snares. Lucas looks at the Revolutionary Rebuff in his hand and says, resolves.
Yeah.
That's
I got another one of those. Yeah, this is fine.
I'm gonna hold this counter in case you play something I actually care about.
Yeah, you know, if he countered that and then Zahn untapped and cast Gideon, that would be unfortunate. So sitting back on that, I do like the play.
Zahn thought about swinging with Copter, but just passes. Lucas goes for another Avacyn, and that one gets Stasis snared too. So now Lucas actually has lost both of his Angels.
Okay. He does look to have a Linvala in hand, still has Blessed Alliance, Reflector Mage, Revolutionary Rebuff, Selfless Spirit, so he's got a lot of stuff going on yet.
Now, I said before it was really a show of strength where he didn't counter the Stasis Snare. Looking at it this way, I don't like that both the Avacyns are gone. I don't know how we got to that spot.
Yeah, if you play the other way, he still gets to Stasis Snare the first Avacyn, but then he has the backup he could cast from there.
Yeah. We'll see. Selfless Spirit was a play for Lucas. He passes back to Zahn.
Lucas is in a position currently where the action is on Zahn. Zahn has nothing going on.
Well, neither does Lucas, right? Smuggler's Copter actually is a fine blocker on this board.
Well, when you look at white-red humans versus blue-white Flash, the Flash player is more comfortable as the game goes longer. So
Sure.
This is a fine position. Being down Avacyns is very unfortunate.
Well, this is a scary one. The Weaver of Lightning, the play for Zahn. This should force the counterspell out of Lucas, as it will just eat the Spellfless Spirit if he doesn't make the play.
Yep. I like rebuffing there for sure.
I don't know. So Zahn plays a third Thraben Inspector. Things have gotten actually scarier here for Lucas. Avacyn was the most important card in the matchup, and he lost both copies.
Yeah, he does have a Linvala that he can just cast her as a 5/5, which
That's
I like
pretty
a good
good.
amount.
Draw with Smuggler's Copter. Lucas has Blessed Alliance, Smuggler's Copter, Reflector Mage, and Linvala the Preserver. He's got Zahn down to 13.
Given that he has no counter spells left over, I like just getting aggressive, forcing Zahn to deal with this giant flyer.
And a pass. Neither of Linvala's triggers happening here.
Though it does have the ability to be a 5/5 flyer, which
Yeah, that's fine here.
pretty good.
A second Copter by Zahn, and a Selfless Spirit. So he doesn't have an answer for the large flyer right now, outside of a double block. And a draw here from Lucas is a big one. It's going to be Spell Queller. That should be a counter spell for just about anything in Zahn's deck, and it's protected by Selfless Spirit. So here's Reflector Mage from Lucas. He's going to bounce, it looks like, Zahn's Selfless Spirit. And I think Lucas is just trying to turn the corner aggressively here.
Yeah, the Reflector Mage really doesn't get better than this. And he's able to leave up the Spell Queller anyway. I like the play here. He doesn't have a way to break through the double block with the Copters.
Well, he can sack the Selfless Spirit. That's his way to break through.
Sure.
It's not great. But Zahn's Selfless Spirit goes back into hand. This means that the attack is available as long as, if Lucas wants to trade Selfless Spirit with Smuggler's Copter, he can do it. So he'll swing Linvala. Zahn's going to crew 1. Will he crew 2? He will. Pair of 3/3s. They're going to both double block the 5/5. Zahn gets to draw and discard twice. One, he draws Declaration in Stone. Already has a Nahiri in his hand, too. A lot of ways to kill the flyer.
Lucas currently has that covered by the Spell Queller, but if he's able to Nahiri and then untap and have another removal spell.
Exactly, if he has the Nahiri and the Declaration. Zahn, the first one trigger, discards Pia Nalar. Draw and discard again, finds a land, discards the Inspiring Vantage. So, 2 3/3s. Lucas will make his Angel indestructible. So 1 Copter hits the graveyard, and Lucas passes, leaving up Spell Queller. Wants to cover a removal spell.
If Zahn had something like Declaration in Stone plus Galvanic Bombardment, that'd be really big here.
He's going to go for Nahiri the Harbinger, and that one is going to force the Spell Queller out of Lucas. So no Planeswalker for Zahn just yet. It is under the Spell Queller. As we go back to Lucas, he'll untap. Zahn does have Declaration in Stone in hand, and Lucas draws a 3rd Spell Queller.
That is a really big draw for Lucas.
Yeah.
If he can control the top of his deck, that or like a Stasis Snare probably what he would be looking for.
Yeah, so the Linvala attacks Zahn down to 8. Lucas plays a Smuggler's Copter. That Linvala plus the Copter, that's lethal now.
Linvala plus 2 Spell Quellers as well. Zahn has to have multiple efficient plays if he's going to come out of this turn alive.
Yeah, if he goes for Declaration, Lucas can quell it. Then next turn, crew the Copter, swing all the flyers, and that's more than enough to kill Zahn. He would need 2 removal spells.
Declaration Bombardment would be very good here.
Yeah, he would start out on leading on the Bombardment, and then if it gets countered, he can Declaration Stone all the Quellers. Seems pretty good. Get his Nahiri back, exile Linvala. It would be a huge turn if he has them both. He will attempt to Declaration the Quellers. I don't think Lucas can let this happen.
No, just letting that resolve would... your options are letting it resolve and then try to Queller the Nahiri. You just can't let Zahn have the Nahiri. But then you kind of lose your Quellers for not much reason.
That's interesting. Yeah, so he could get 2 clues and then quell the Nahiri again?
Right.
Or he could just quell the Declaration.
Getting a couple of clues is not terrible. If everything goes wrong here, it gives him a couple of redraws.
So he's going to do the route where he gets the clues and then quells again. So why is this better than just quelling the Declaration?
If the second removal spell is Bombardment, you wouldn't get clues for your trouble.
Sure, okay. And I suppose he's still presenting nearly lethal. He still has the Smuggler's Copter, the Spell Queller, the Linvala. That's a smart line. Land from Zahn. Selfless Spirit, that's a creature that can block. 1 card remaining. If I'm Lucas, there's just no way that can be Galvanic Bombardment anymore.
Right, yeah, he would have done that, got the Nahiri back. Yeah, that's just too good.
Queller will crew Smuggler's Copter. Here's a swing for 8. Lucas draws and discards. Zahn is at 8. This will force a block. Zahn will crew his own Smuggler's Copter.
Yeah, let's crack at least 1 clue to try to find Stasis Snare here.
Sure. Finds Reflector Mage. So the 2 creatures look like they're going to team up to block the Linvala. Zahn draws and discards off the Copter, discards Thraben Inspector. Will the trade happen? It will. Zahn down to 5. Lucas still has 5 power worth of flyers on the board. Zahn has no defense against those, so he'll need something to survive the turn. 7th land for Lucas and a pass.
Lucas still hanging on with the Blessed Alliance in his hand. That card looking pretty sorry with the way this game is played out.
Well, this has been interesting, right? Lucas actually was the aggressor this game, which I'm not sure he expected. When he gets to be the defensive player, Blessed Alliance is really good.
Right.
Galvanic Bombardment from Zahn Syed. This is a huge draw.
And given
and he knows it too. Look at his face there. Lucas is going to try to find a counterspell, cracks a clue, finds Selfless Spirit.
If he did that on his own
yeah,
turn.
if he had done, you're right. If he had done that on his own turn, he could have cast it. This wouldn't have worked.
Given that he has no counter spells, he really should have. And
Yeah,
because
he's paying a big price for that misstep.
Because the copter is tapped, and here he can exile it.
Oh my. There's a lot of. This is why I don't play white blue flash, is because I'll make mistakes like that all the time. Lucas taking a question away from the table, so we have a pause in the game. You got to watch the clock here. Usually, when a player asks a question away from the table, in case you're wondering about the clock, the judge will award a 1 or 2 minute extension to the game.
Yep.
So we will keep you updated on that.
Yeah.
If Zahn's going to turn the corner, which this play, if it resolves, will, you're going to want to watch this clock. To make sure that he gets the win.
Yep. Zahn has a couple clues yet. He has to get something better than his inspectors to start getting some aggression going, but the Nahiri should make that relatively easy.
So, Galvanic Bombardment takes down the Spell Queller. Linvala, Nahiri comes into play. She exiles the Smuggler's Copter. And, this is a sweet play by Lucas. So, Nahiri, the -2, exiles a tapped artifact or creature. So in response to that ability, Lucas is going to crew his Smuggler's Copter and then untap up to 2 creatures. It counters the ability.
Using the secret mode on Smuggler's Copter.
Love it.
Or on Blessed
Great.
Alliance.
That is one of those techier plays. So happy to see Lucas make it. And now Zahn, he makes his last card, that's Pia Nalar, and we go back to Kiefer's turn. Reflector Mage in hand. He's going to Reflector Mage away the token. Yeah. Okay. No, there's no blockers left for Zahn. Can Lucas win? Not yet. Here's Selfless Spirit. It's going to crew Smuggler's Copter. Will he kill the Planeswalker or hit Zahn? He will take a turn off to hit the Planeswalker. Nahiri is down. Draw and discard of Planes.
He has lethal attackers on the following turn. I like getting rid of the Nahiri.
Remember when we said that Blessed Alliance was just going to be no good this game?
Yeah, really well played by Lucas
yeah,
there.
Wow. That was great.
You saw him.
Yeah.
That's like that. That must have been what the judge question was as well.
He wants to make sure this works because it's so good if it does.
Yep, exactly. And that's something that a lot of players don't leverage enough. If you're unsure about something, if it seems weird, just ask. That's what the judges are there for.
And now because he has a Selfless Spirit and 2 Copters, 1 removal spell doesn't even do it. You see Zahn cracking clues. If he finds a bombardment, he is still dead.
Yeah.
What do you shoot? You can't kill anything, and that's the extension of the hand. It is Lucas Kiefer taking the game and the match.
In impressive fashion. Likely,
yeah, there was...
I can't imagine he boarded in Blessed Alliance because that's what the plan was.
To dodge Nahiris.
But that sure was good. Very, very excellent play by Lucas there.
Yeah,